So I'm John Maxwell, Dell Software. Karen Ranabor is one of the senior PMs on my team. I lead the Foglight product management team at Dell Software. Karen and I are both veterans of Quest, so we're both coming up in a couple of months on our 5-year anniversary. So it's kind of interesting that we've been kind of 2.5 years at Quest, 2.5 years at Dell Software. And what I want to do is, just in a couple of slides, give you a quick overview. I'm curious, how many people here are familiar with Foglight or Foglight for virtualization? So basically, almost all of you. So one of the things I wanted to do was actually share with you what I can publicly, some of our roadmap for this calendar year, so you can see what we're doing. It's interesting, just 2 years ago, we used to come out with one major release of the product roughly every 12 months. We sped that up. Last year we came with 3 major releases in a 12-month period, and we're on track to do 4 major releases in this calendar year. And that's because we do agile development, have done some fine-tuning of having parallel development teams in different locations working on different projects so we can deliver new functionality quicker. One of the things that you may not realize from a strategic standpoint, part of our whole go-to-market with Foglight for virtualization is to be a heterogeneous solution. I'm sure a lot of you probably looked at the market shares, and certainly VMware is a huge company, but if you look at the hypervisors out there, Hyper-V has really come up. We have a lot of demand for Hyper-V. We've also, in our SMB solution, which if you guys remember, a product called vKernel that Quest acquired about 4 years ago, that product we call Foglight for Virtualization Standard Edition. I'll talk about some of the roadmap stuff of where we basically moved all the functionality from vKernel into the Foglight product, and then we'll standardize on the Foglight platform, and we'll have a kind of a next generation of the vKernel product out that'll be based on Foglight. But today we support ESX, Hyper-V. At Dell World last year, second week in November, we introduced our OpenStack and KVM support. And then we just introduced Power VM support, and we have in development this year Zen Server support. Now with Foglight, which is interesting, it is a platform. It's not just a software product, and we actually have 3 go-to-markets with the product. We have a APM market with Foglight for applications. In fact, you can go to foglight.com and poke around at the SaaS version of that product. In fact, all of our products will have SaaS offerings this year. APM was the first one last year. And then we have Foglight for databases, which covers everything from the big ones like SQL Server and Oracle, to legacy applications like Sybase and DB2. But again, they're all built on the Foglight platform. They're all interchangeable, and we use the term cartridges to kind of talk about one aspect of the product to another. So for example, when Karen goes to the demo of Foglight for virtualization, you're going to see some tabs there, one for Exchange, one for Active Directory. Now those happen to be cartridges that we developed for Foglight for virtualization to allow you to monitor virtualized AD and Exchange. But our team members on Foglight for Databases actually created a version of the SQL Server cartridge, which is actually virtual aware, that our customers who buy Foglight for virtualization can actually get the SQL Server cartridge and plug it in, and it's all one dashboard, one single pane of glass, one Foglight management server, so forth and so on. So, heterogeneous. Foglight started out, the virtualization part of Foglight is kind of the newest kid in the block, as far as Foglight goes. Foglight's been around for about 12 years, and the Foglight for virtualization has been around for 7 years. And so before that, we did OS level monitoring, that type of thing. And one of the things that I think makes Foglight for virtualization unique is that, we're, as you'll see from Kieran's demo, we go in and look at, the ESX hosts and go into VMs, but we also allow you to drill down into that VM and look at the processes that are going on from a Linux or Windows perspective, and you then delve into, if you have the appropriate cartridges, go into SQL Server. Is SQL Server having problems because there's something wrong with a problem with SQL Server, or is there an issue in the virtual infrastructure? Is it a problem with the physical host slowing down, or is it a problem with, say, VMware itself? The other thing, I remember a couple of years at VMworld attending a session where VMware themselves said over 70% of performance issues are storage related. And that's why 3 years ago we came out with a storage cartridge that basically does VM to LUN analysis. So we actually connect from a virtual file down through the array, actually through the network, down to the array to controller, down to the disk extent, and you can actually trace to see if you have performance problems. And what's interesting, one of our larger customers you may have heard of, called Dell, They use Foglight. They've right now around 18,000 VMs, and that I think will be close to doubling in the next year that they're monitoring a Foglight. But one of the things they also use for the product is they're switching out storage. They want to see which VMs are associated with the array, so they actually go backwards. They'll go look at an array, see which VMs are on it, so then they can say vMotion stores those VMs off. So you can go either way. So, deep application support, specifically the AD Exchange and SQL cartridges are optimized for virtualization, so they help with the finger pointing, so the VM admin doesn't have to get blamed for everything and say, well, no, this is actually a SQL Exchange problem. Last year, we added VDI support for VMware View. One of the things that Kieran will talk about, and I'll share with you on the roadmap in a second, is we're going to go big in Zendesk and XenApp. And you may go, well, gee, that's kind of, why are you going to that space? I'll tell you why. When we were visiting a lot of customers, I just kind of, to break the ice, I go, hey, what's your biggest problem right now? And they go, managing the VDI environment is just a pain. And so that was why I originally came with the VMware View, and of course, as soon as you come out with that one, everyone asks for Citrix. So we've had the Citrix one in development for a while. We actually, as you know, Dell's a pretty big player in the market, with the Wise acquisition and all of that. So we worked with the CCC group at Dell. We actually worked with Citrix themselves to look at kind of what is the market missing, what will we need for kind of a category killer solution to help both the Zendesk, XenApp administrator, and the VM administrator. So that is coming out this spring. And the other thing with Foglight is people just think of it as a monitoring product, but it's much more. When we have optimization, actionable optimization, we can go in and we can find out if you have the right number of CPU set or memory. Dell internally, the first month they had the product installed, just on by viewing a couple hundred VMs, they recouped 41 terabytes of overallocated storage in the product. So there's a lot of things you can do from a waste finding perspective and from an optimization perspective, and Kieran will go through that. Capacity planning, chargeback, showback, and then a really cool feature that's coming out in the next 30 days in our 8.0 release is a change tracking feature that will actually look at every change that goes on in your environment, whether it's initiated by a VM admin or software. I mean, even like DRS changes, for example. And it'll allow you kind of a date timestamp on them, and then you can actually go in and roll back the change if you want to. And we added, when we were previewing this with some of our Lighthouse accounts, they said, well, why wouldn't you correlate changes to performance issues? So we now have a way to go in and say, in the past week, which VMs have had a 10% or more degradation, that's just an example, over the past week, and then we can show those VMs and then track the changes associated with it. Or you can say which ones had a 10. We were talking with the server group yesterday because we're going to be doing some integration with OME, which is the software that allows you to manage Dell servers. And we were talking about being able to track hardware changes and then correlate them to either better performance or worse performance. Because we have the analytics built into the product.
So you just in your optimization thing, you say including the industry's only remediation automation. Do you see? Are there no other products out there?
So what happened? Well, from what I know of, and there's not that many products out there, everyone reports on the performance issues or waste finding, whether it's zombie VMs or overallocated storage or under overallocated CPU. But they give you the report, and it's upon you to go into say vCenter and do it.
You heard of
really
VM Turbo?
Yeah. They're the only ones that do it. So
well, okay.
They may be the only ones that do a certain thing.
No. So there's a big difference in this is a religious war between us and VM Turbo. They go in and try to do a better job at DRS. We're not in that business. Okay, we're not in the business of trying to optimize the VMware environment or whatever on the fly and add all the overhead and all that kind of fun stuff. What we do is we go in and look at your environment and we look at a 30, 60, up to 180-day period, and we say based on this, we believe that your virtual CPUs or memory or storage should be this value. And if you want to, you can go in the product and make that change. You can also, if you want to get pretty aggressive there, you can go in and set up policies where we'll go in and sweep those VMs, and you can do it by pattern masking, stuff like that. So there's certain VMs you never want to touch or something like that. You can do that. But what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll optimize them. When we call optimization, it can be CPU, memory, or storage, either upping it or shrinking it, based on the parameters you want us to look at. Or we get into the waste finding, which is, zombie VMs, VMs that were removed from vCenter but not deleted, stuff like that. So that's our version of optimization, which is we're not going to replace DRS or anything like that. We're going to look at how you've defined your environment and then give you suggestions or go in and allow you to go in there and optimize it from that perspective.
So what's the thing that only you'll do?
Right.
When there's that list,
They'll do that.
Right.
not from what we've seen.
Yeah. No.
So it sounds similar to SolarWinds virtualization. Theoretically, it's very close.
No, to me it's more like VCops.
VCops.
I think
VCops or VROPs in the 6th iteration, which added in the functionality like technically automated remediation, but that's that's freshly out the gate.
Reports on zombie VMs.
Reports on,
Can't take action.
but we're talking remediation
It's a report.
automation.
Yeah, so we can go, so from the display, Karen will show you, from the display, you can then go in and select what you want and then say fix.
That's
Or
what
what you can do.
Turbo does too.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not sure at all the levels that we do, and again, it may be something they just added in the
I'd say
last couple of seconds.
strip out the
but-
parentheses and you're good.
we'll show you what we got actually, and then you
But again,
tell us
what
if
we
they got
call
it.
optimization, what they call are
it's like-
two different things, and we're not going to go down that path ever.
Okay.
And
But I'd like to go down the change tracking with rollback path a little deeper because, I mean, we've seen change management tools exist in the past. I mean, Ionix had that crappy product they gave to VMware, which they released as a crappy product as VMware. And we've always wanted something that worked well, or let's just say worked at all and you could implement.
yeah.
I love the idea of that. I'd love to see the implementation. I would love to.
I've got a screen where I'm going to cover that. So I'll get to that real quick. Now, the thing, just to let you guys know, I've got some screen captures in here of the 8.0 and 8.1 products, but we're not going to demo that. We're going to demo what we're currently shipping because that's kind of a Dell policy that we don't, promote
That's fair.
other product. The other thing that I want to make note of is, we're certainly a mid to enterprise is our sweet spot for the product. However, we've done a lot of work in the past year of really the ease of use. So now we went to a vApp, for example, to install the product. It takes, used to take like an hour and a half, and now takes 15 minutes. And that vApp is actually pre-configured out of the box, optimized for up to 3,000 VMs. So you get sub-second response time.
So, question about that. So, pre-configure for and tune for 3,000 VMs. VMs, that's kind of easy. It's the in-app integration part. Is it tuned for that level? If of those 3,000 VMs, I had 500 of them were SQL servers, and you're doing deep, intensive interrogation of that and collecting all the data and change management, will that out-of-the-box install be ready to go for that and scale?
Yeah,
Straight up.
I mean, we basically, in the 7 years, we learned through customer support and engineering kind of what all the knobs to turn and all that kind of stuff. And so we used to make that a manual process, which is like, why are we doing this, And we had a lot of support calls, customers trying to figure out how to tune the product. And we just said, let's just put all this knowledge, because what's interesting is, we have still like developers that were the original developers working on the products. Like, well, let's just tap that knowledge and put it into the product, which is why also this year, I don't have on the roadmap because I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it, but we're actually going to have a physical appliance that we have for larger environments, so just like plug and play. But we do have now the vApp is more for the mid to lower enterprise customers. We really are not promoting most of our larger customers that have 20 to 110,000 VMs. Most of them have physical servers because you can run Foglight on either a Linux or Windows server. It's heterogeneous. To scale that size environment. So, again, one thing with Foglight is it's both real time and it's historical and it's actionable. And most of our customers keep roughly 12 months of data. So to give you an example of what the overhead of that would be, we need about 300 gigabytes to store 12 months of data for 3,000 VMs. And that's actually pretty good. That's minimum if you look at some of the other products out there. But again, Karen's going to go through that. So again, what I'm going to share with you is what I can publicly share from a roadmap perspective for this calendar year. So we're going to release the 8.0 in a couple of weeks. And there's two main features, and I'll show you. I'll go through the change analyzer, the new dashboards. There's, I mentioned the concept of cartridges. We have a major upgrade to our storage management cartridge where we're adding Hyper-V support. Because I mentioned Hyper-V is really big right now, a lot of customer demand in that. And we have capacity planning from a virtual storage perspective, but we don't have it at the physical array. So we've now added physical array capacity planning, meaning we'll tell you when your physical array is going to run out of storage, like you have 1 month or 2 months or 3 months worth of
Forecast.
storage left in that. And then we're constantly adding new devices. So we just added the VSP device. So
Is that just Dell storage or anybody?
no, we support everyone. We support EMC. We just added 3PAR about 2-3 months ago. Our biggest customer base is NetApp. Like 45% of our storage customers use NetApp. So it's, in fact, it's funny, post Dell, I became an EMC technology partner, an IBM technology partner, and an HTS partner. And it was interesting going through Dell. They go, like, you want to do what? It's like, well, we're Dell software. So yeah, we're heterogeneous. So that's what's immediately coming out. And then we've got, I'm just kind of putting 8Xs because, again, with the agile development, we just look at when we complete a feature and then come up with a release vehicle for it. The next thing that's going to come out of the pipeline is the Zendesk XenApp cartridge, and again, that's providing kind of 2 use cases: one for the Citrix administrator, one for the VM administrator. We also have, I'll touch upon a new feature that goes past the capacity management feature we have in the product called Capacity Director, and there's a performance aspect to that actually will go out there and look across clusters and choose the right place to allocate your VMs. But again, it's more of a non-intrusive means of optimization versus going in and changing things. And then Q3, we're going to continue to expand the number of platforms we support, so Zen server support. And then we're going to do some really neat stuff with something called Open Manage Essentials, which again, that's the software you use to monitor everything from the temperature to the CPU performance of Dell servers and all that. And we're going to add some interesting analytics to that to add some value to customers who use OME just for OME, and then also to add some interesting plays in there for people who happen to have Dell servers for when you're analyzing performance problems, because it will now be cognizant of the actual physical processors and all of that. So that's going to be pretty cool. And then, as I mentioned, we already have the APM product on the SaaS platform, and we're going to put the Foglight for virtualization on the SaaS platform, and that's when we'll kind of flip the switch for the vKernel customers and move them over to the Foglight platform. So this is the change analyzer. So I know I'm not supposed to get in front of the screen here. So let me kind of explain some of the functionality. So we're tracking every change that you as a VM administrator would make, or that DRS or something like that would change. Okay, and what you can do is you can go in and just filter by VMs or by time. And you can just say, what changes occurred in my virtual environment in the past 24 hours or past week or past month or whatever. Or you can say, let me look at a certain subset of VMs and figure out, did any changes occur to them? And then when you do those lists, there's actually a part of the drop down is you can go in and you can look at what the prior value was. Like, in fact, if I typed in VM John 1 and said, in the past month, what changes have happened to VM John 1? We'll do it in chronological order. You can go in and look at what the previous value was. And at any point in time in that, you can go in and roll back.
Is this leveraging any of the IP from Change Auditor for virtualization? The wonderful Quest product?
No, I don't think so. No. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
no, I don't think it did. No.
Say roll back.
Go.
Are you keeping these as snapshots somewhere, or what?
Well, we're changing the value back, so it's not a snapshot
hardware,
rollback from that perspective. It's changing the value back.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good
CPU
question, because that's
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it would have to be how granular it is, if it's monitoring just details of the virtual machine versus details of the underlying applications running within the virtual machine and virtual environment.
So that is a good question, because we just came out with 5.7 of our SQL Server cartridge, which actually has that same feature just for SQL Server. So what we're doing here is just for your virtual infrastructure, and then our SQL Server product has this, and then I think next month the Oracle product's going to have it at the the database level, and it's going to be, and it's basically the same, almost the same view where you can go in and look at the performance of SQL Oracle, and then if you see like a degradation, for example, then you'll see like a little dot, and you click on that dot, and it'll tell you what the change was that was made to that database. So again, there's a lot of stuff here that we're tracking. But the things that I think that are interesting are to be able to go in and do that correlation to either performance improvements or degradation. So what we did is we created some algorithms to come out with, and it's funny because I used to always, rag on VCops over their stupid badges and stuff, but we actually have now a relative health feature, right? Of the
You
VM.
have badges. No.
So we now have a relative performance health based on CPU, memory, storage of a virtual machine, just to have something to compare to, right? And so what you can do now is you can go in and see that over X period of time for a VM or VMs or whatever, or like I gave the other example of just say, show me any performance degradations over a point of time that was more than greater than this percent, you can see which ones it happened on, and then from that list you select that VM, then you go in and you get a display that allows me to expand out any time period for that VM and see the relative performance, right? And if I drop 10 or 15%, then I can correlate that drop to a change. And then it's up to you if you want to go in and roll back, or you just want to go discuss that with your coworkers.
Is your health base, I guess, is it calculated similar to how VCOps does it? Like,
So-
is it dynamically baselined? And
So it is. It looks over. So our analytics look over periods of time, normally 30, 90, or 180 days, and so it's we have our own patents for. So I'm not really sure exactly how VCops does it, but it's our own algorithm, something that our stats people created.
meaning, do you normally know that, say, this VM CPU runs between 10
Yeah.
and 30%
Exactly,
at
yeah.
this time of the month?
Yeah, actually, we have it down to the time of the day.
It establishes high and low water marks, and it goes
Exactly.
through and
We
determines
apply-
what's anomalous.
We apply business logic to actually all the data that's matrix collected, and then we create a profile of those, and then high-low values, and then actually what is the typical value, and then that actually gives us the health
So baselines, in a sense?
baseline. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but it baselines whereby you don't have to do anything. It just collects intelligence on the environment
Yeah.
and figures it out
Right.
for you.
Right. Yeah. In fact, when he goes through the demo, he'll show you some Intel profile screens where you can see that, from 9 to noon, this is normally what my utilization is, and then it may change from noon to 5 based on that profile.
Is there intelligence in the rollbacks where it says, oh, disk space was increased on this thing, VMDK modified, we'll roll that back, by doing which we'll destroy all the data in there. So things to say, no.
No,
we're not going to do
it's
that.
all based on it's showing you what the value was, and you as the VM administrator will have to make that determination if you want to fall back to that value.
So it makes just recommendations.
Well, no, it does actually. The change tracking doesn't make any recommendation. It's black and white.
Showing you
it says
changes.
it just shows you this is what you changed and this is what the old value was. If you want to go back to the old value, you can select it and say go back to the old value. But this is all. The onus is on you, the VM administrator. We're just showing you.
Yeah.
You
You may want to be wary of maybe even having like an extra pop-up. If you make this change, you will
That's
destroy
yeah.
your virtual machine's disk because you
Warning.
can't shrink disks.
Warning, Will
You
Robinson.
may
Yeah.
need to submit your resume.
Right.
This or this or this is going to happen to the
It's not
the rest of
entirely
your
true.
infrastructure.
We have patented technology that can actually shrink disks. So
That's correct.
Yeah.
But if I go through and I shrink a disk
Yeah.
without using that technology,
Right.
then it will fail.
Yeah.
But yeah, there absolutely is technology to perform those type of activities, but
But yeah, you have to be careful to know if the guest OS is actually using that partition and how it is using it.
And the other thing, kind of get back to the optimization, because again, we have a very philosophical difference with VM Turbo. We're looking at 150 variables for VMware alone, where they're looking at 15. So there's a big difference in what we're looking at. Plus, we're looking at other environmentals. We're looking at your operating system, your storage, and other things that they don't even calculate. So but again,
they do calculate that, but that's not the point. But you do provide the insight and visibility end to end, which they do to an extent. But you also provide some other elements of intelligence into it.
Right,
not
because
knocking that.
we're a tool for VM administrators who want to have control of their environment versus having a tool control their environment. So, notice here the screenshots look different than what Kieran's going to show you. So, one of the other things we're doing with the 8.0 product is we're going to the Dell Clarity standard, and that's the standard we have across Dell, and we have across Dell Software Group for GUI design. So that's why also you're like going, oh, this looks a little different.
Is this going away from the pretty interface of Foglight we've loved all of our lives into I don't want to say a crappy interface, but it certainly doesn't look like the Foglight interface where it's like, wow, this impresses me.
Well, I mean, we'll still have like the spinnies and stuff, but again, if you look at the Dell branding and then just some of the I mean, there's refreshes we're doing. No, I made sure that the spinning wheels aren't going away, but we're actually going to have down the road, you can actually customize what you want, whether you want an interactive bar graph or you want a spinning wheel or something like that. But yeah, but no, I mean, it's I think it's just a more an update, fresh look, you know, from a web UI perspective. And it's going to also allow us, not with this release, but the next release, as will be fully HTML5 compatible, and then that way the UI will be portable, so you can use it on a tablet. You'll have swipe and all that kind of stuff. In fact, we already have that with the SaaS version of the APM product. So you can see here, this is actually the new, we're going to have a new set. You can see that there's 4 tabs there. This is something new that we've never had in the product, where the product, again, being a product for more VM experts, you know, kind of like, okay, you can navigate into Hyper-V or VMware, your storage or whatever. What we're doing now is we have a new screen that basically kind of stole this from vKernel, our own product that we bought 4 years ago. But what we now have is this getting started where we show your entire infrastructure, and we show you the overall health of, in this case, of the screen capture, VMware, Hyper-V, and OpenStack. And then from that you can like drill down it. So we'll show you like, you know, we'll show you kind of an inventory of your enterprise. You know, and again, we don't care how many vCenters, how many data centers, you know, whatever you've got. So the you know, overall health. We'll show you areas in specific VMs that need to be addressed. I hid this. We'll have an area for performance optimization again, which is saying, you know, you've got 50 zombie VMs, or you have 30 VMs that are over allocated with CPU, or that type of thing.
Could you just spend a little bit of time telling us about your PowerShell commandlets and how you actually manage a Hyper-V host? Or
actually, okay, so I'm going to, so I can get him to the demo, make note, and he's going to go into that.
All right, thank you.
And then this is a drill down in, for example, into the optimization. If I drill down into that to look at, you know, areas that I could, again, it's basic CPU, memory, storage, that type of thing, to go in and look at it or make changes. And then this is the new capacity director. This has been a huge development effort. We've had capacity planning in the product, and Karen will show it to you. We called it capacity management, and it had very basic modeling. What we've done now is come out with a very advanced scenario modeling tool. And part of this was developed, you know, Matt kind of, you know, mentioned, the creation of Dell software and Quest and all that. So one of the things that we do is we work with Dell, being a 100,000 person company with 22,000 sales reps, and we go, what solutions do you need to sell to your customers? And one of the big things that came out that we were getting both feedback from our customer base and prospects and from Dell was to have a capacity planning tool that will allow you to do things like P2V modeling that would go across hypervisors and would, you know, make capacity workload recommendations and things like that. So this is something that we kind of built upon our current capacity management and then added, you know, a lot more technology. So this has been a huge development effort. It's been over a year with a lot of big development team working on this, and this will GA, we're looking at right now the April timeframe.
Does it make recommendations for P2V, or does it actually use the technologies that you guys own to actually perform the P2V?
So we got out of the P2V business. That was a product that I actually EOL'd. That was the vConverter. Most of all the V products are gone. But what we do is it's more of, this is what you'll need from, say a ESX host or that type of.
It's like running capacity planner, essentially.
Yeah. So because we remember we do OS level monitoring, right? Mm-hmm. So we know what's going on in that physical server. So now we'll aggregate that into, say, a cluster you want to create, or whatever, or existing clusters that you have. Like, could they fit in? Mm-hmm. That type of thing.
So you can use this to do the OS level monitoring and deep dive monitoring of your physical servers, in addition to your virtual servers.
That's something we always forget to mention. So I would say, we're probably going to hit 9,000 customers of Foglight for virtualization this year, and we do like little surveys and stuff with them. And out of that, roughly 8,700 customers, the average virtualization is around 72%. Mm-hmm.
Just curious, did you run the new interface by your customers? I'm just curious, just straight up, because I know VMware would we're going to do this thing, and we're not going to talk to anybody outside of marketing, and then we're going to release it, and it's going to have a stupid name like vRealize. Or we're going to release VTAX and then repeal it a year later, or release a feature that's forced like SSO that no one asked for.
Yeah. So,
right? So I mean, did you talk to your 9,000 customers to say, what do you think of this new interface?
So we didn't talk to 9,000 customers about what do you think about the interface, but we actually have a focus group of accounts, or roughly 40, that we talk to on a very regular basis. I mean, just myself and my team talk to probably 50 to 60 accounts a month. We have some accounts that are really big ones that we talk to like on a weekly basis. And we also, now that we're part of Dell, since 5 IT divisions of Dell use Foglight, they're kind of like our kind of
internal sounding board.
Yeah, and also they are our alpha sites. So before we even come out with beta, we actually rolled out to Dell Alpha, which are pretty big environments like SecureWorks and Dell IT and Dell.com and stuff like that, and they can actually shake stuff out that we normally didn't have a real life environment to do.
So do you have any like anecdotal statements from internal Dell IT saying, wow, I mean, the old version was great, but this new version, I love it because of X or Y?
Like the fact that it's cleaner, and what we're trying to do is make it easier to navigate.
That's fair.
I mean, that's the big, that has been the crux of what I've been focusing on really for 2 years, because with the vKernel product, if any of you are familiar with that, it was an insanely intuitive product. I mean, if you know, it's just like boom, 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 instant gratification. And with Foglight, it was more of, okay, you've really got to know what you're kind of doing. So what we're doing is we're trying to take the power that we have with Foglight and now make it
intuitive,
very intuitive,
straightforward, simple to use.
And we have a team of just 8 designers that have backgrounds in user-friendly, UX and the kind of stuff that have been working on this.
So I mean, I've worked with customers and I've worked with products in the past where you go from one version to the other, and it used to be I click, I'm done, and then it's like we decided to add 8 clicks into there. So it was supposed to be removing clicks.
It was like a follow and backup exec, right? I mean, remember that Firestorm, right? When they changed the UI. I mean, people don't like change. I'd just be happy using Word 2003, right? I mean, it's like
we're perfect 5.1.
I can't find anything anymore, But no, what actually for us is the opposite. We want to reduce the number of clicks. In fact, the goal is everything is within 3 clicks. So
you said you got rid of all the V products.
Yeah.
EOL'd them. Is that actually just because there was good stuff in that? Are you rolling that into it?
So
one of Dell's issues.
I'm the one who EOL'd all of them, so I'll tell you about them. So dead and buried.
We love you.
So vConverter, which was as a product manager, a nightmare product, because basically we allowed a 45-day trial on it, and no one ever bought the product because they went and did the conversions and never bought the product.
That's terrible.
They just download over and over and over.
Yeah, absolutely, I can see that.
Yeah.
So we got rid of vConverter, and we're out of that business, right? We're out of the conversion of physical to virtual. We had a product called vControl, which actually ended up becoming the automation component of Foglight, so that's buried in the product. We had a product called vOptimizer, which did the whole disk stuff optimization. That's part of that. Actually, is kind of what bore or helped germinate the optimization feature in the product.
So basically, you bought Quest, who had a ton load of products.
I was an old Quest employee. Yeah.
Well, okay, Dell bought Quest, which had a whole ton of products, and Dell's virtualization, even management software portfolio, is huge. Is Foglight one of the products where you're trying to gather all those different historic pieces to stick it into one place?
So that's a great question. So strategically, we're trying to make Foglight the monitoring product for all of Dell, which is why we're doing the OME integration, some iDRAC, and there's some other stuff we're working on I can't talk about. But yeah, in fact, there could be, in the future, every Dell server may have a little Foglight footprint on it or something like that. I mean, so Foglight is our IP for monitoring.
Okay.
And
for virtualization or potentially physical servers as well?
Potentially everything.
But Foglight in general has had that ability to do physical servers. It's just vFoglight was the element for, because Foglight for Exchange, Foglight for SQL. You're giving all the IP of we integrated this, we integrated that.
Yes.
Where did you pull your chargeback showback from?
So that was built internally. But here's what's interesting, though.
Because she cares about that. That's why we'll jump on.
So there was this kind of, you talk about, I've been talking about these. I shouldn't even use the term religious war, given what's been going on lately. But the philosophical difference is, so we did chargeback one way in vKernel and one way in Foglight, and that was based on allocation versus on used, right? And then I asked customers, I want it based on allocations, or how I define. I want it based on used. So there's a project that's probably going to be the last feature that we're going to kind of okay, what really meets the needs of the many when it comes to chargeback. And I always run the term showback because I try to educate customers. It's like, you can use chargeback for some pretty neat reporting, without actually having to do, chargeback. And that is one of the key features of the product, and there's a good percentage of the customer base, not big, it's probably around 15%, because we also gather statistics from Dial Home on what features of the product people are using.
Right.
And, so it's around 10% of our customer base actually uses the chargeback.
Yeah, it would be nice to see. I mean, that's my main problem, at least where I'm at, is trying to come up with the price of a VM. Even with, we'll work out the software prices, but what does 2 CPU actually cost? And,
$7.
Right.
Pick a number.
42. So chargeback is important to me.